Hey everybody, welcome back to Just One More Row, my little crafting vlog we got going on here. So I went ahead and I showed you my Columbia Minerva Hand Knits for Men pattern book, but I wanted to go ahead and go through this one here, which is from Vogue, and this is from the spring-summer of 1959. This is really interesting because they're going to show you how to knit with mohair, vacation and sportswear. So we have a lot of really fun advertisements like this for like spinnerin. So this is a definite late 1950s, early 1960s sweater type. It's not super fitted. It is with chunkier yarn. So this is not a weird sort of setup, but this does look really comfortable. So when you get some of these older magazines, definitely take a look at the ads. And if you know how to put these sweaters together, these can be great inspiration. So here we have a bunch of knitting news. These magazines are pretty good because they do give you a walkthrough of how to knit and crochet. Here we can see for Botany Yarns. You will find a number of patterns from this era that are from Botany Yarn brand. DMC. Now, I do want to take a moment and talk about sizing, because sizing does come up whenever we discuss some of these different ones here. And these are how to take a bunch of the measurements, so it tells you where to measure for your bust, waist, hip, and arm length. And sizes, vintage sizes, so like in this case 10, 12, 14, 16, are going to be different than modern sizing. I would not worry about that number there too much. What you are interested in is the bust, waist, and hip. So for like a size 10, you have a bust of 31 inches, a waist of 24, and a hip of 33. And these run everywhere from a size 10 up here to a 46, and that has a bust of 48 inches, a waist of 41 inches, and then a hip of 50. Keep that one in mind. Arm length you can easily vary, so I don't ever worry about that, but these do run from 16¼ inches up to 18 inches. So down here for children's sizes, the same kind of deal. You're going to go ahead and measure all of this. The big difference is that they're going to have height. Interestingly enough, for men's sizes, you're only measuring the chest and arm length, and your chest only goes up to a 44 inch. But your arm length can go up to a 21½. So apparently if you have a big chest, you have very long arms as well. But just keep in mind that some of these sizes are not super small. Also, you in theory would know how to size some of these up. So even if they didn't have your size in here at this time, you still would have known how to do some of that. Please keep in mind that in some places, knitting was taught in public schools up into the 1960s. So it is not out of the realm of possibility that you could have gone to school and learned how to do this. Okay. Again, really cool. Take a look at the advertisements for these. That is a monstrously huge collar back up here in here. This looks like a very neat slip stitch color work. This looks like it's a moss stitch with a very cabled edging, which is something you can easily do. Instead of putting your cables in the middle, put them on the edge, and it creates a very interesting effect, and that's what's been done here. And this one here, you can see the cables are up next to the button band. So over here, we have another ad here. So for another yarn company, this one's kind of neat because it's a long coat. This is not super hard to make. You would basically just make a sweater, leave off the ribbing, and then just keep going and widen as you go down. So if you have your increases spaced evenly, that would be very easy to make. And it is worked in pieces. And how do I know? Because that is the seam right there. This does appear to have a folded over hem, which is always a nice finishing detail. The collar here and what appears to be the button band or closure area, there is a cable running down that edge. All right, so moving on to the Vogue knitting book. Here we go. Fashioned for beach and play. Really basic cardigan here, folded over hem, worked in pieces. There's your seam. Looks like it may be, if it's a set-in sleeve, like that sleeve cap is not very deep. What makes this interesting is that the ribbing is picked up, and then you can actually see a mitered corner right here at the top. If you wanted to, you could actually make this and then sew part of your button band shut, and then you have basically like a pullover or a polo. Over here, this is a cabled V-neck cardigan. It doesn't look like the V there is folded at all. That actually looks like it's a mitered corner there. This probably is a drop shoulder considering how wide that shoulder is. Over here we have a cardigan. You're going to get a lot of these. Now this button band is probably, you could easily knit this one on. I'm willing to bet this is not folded over because that looks like a slip stitch edge right there. And then you just come up and then add this button band in when you do your collar. This looks like a modification on like a basket weave. So it's just a very tiny basket weave stitch and does have set-in sleeves to it. And none of the sweaters that you've seen so far, again, I would put them maybe the cable one over here, advanced beginner, but this is more of an intermediate beginner. The other one here is another intermediate beginner. This is a very simple repeating stitch pattern. The biggest thing you're gonna have is a little bit of shaping, the button band. That's really about it. Like you'll have some seaming. So we have more for beach and play. This right here is actually a set. So you're going to have like a little tank top here, very useful, and a little pair of shorts. Those are super duper cute. This is worked flat in pieces. There's your seam. Does have a folded over hem at the bottom, and looks like you have a little folded over hem at the top. This is a pretty basic, wearable, everyday sort of thing. Do this in like a cotton or a linen. That would be super cool for the summer. Like, it will literally be cool. Linen is incredibly breathable. And this is a beginner pattern. There's like next to no shaping in this. The shorts I would put probably a little bit more towards like an intermediate beginner, because pants, once you get in here with like the inseam and then the crotch seam, that's just going to have some more shaping. So you would need to pay attention a little bit more. Knitted shorts. I've never done knitted shorts, so I can't speak to how useful or comfortable they are. But you could easily at the top put in a drawstring or an elastic. Over here, we have a simple little A-line striped dress with a very shallow but wide collar. It's not quite a boat neck. Like, it wants to be a boat neck, but it's not ready to commit to being a boat neck just yet. Even though this is in black and white, you can definitely see the stripe pattern. This would be something very easy to both make and wear. This could be a great way to use up your stash, and definitely use stuff up, but I would call that a beginner pattern because it does not look like there is much, if any, shaping. There's a little bit right here along the edge. There'll be a little bit along the sleeve, a little bit up here, but not much. It's mostly just a stockinette striped pattern. And you could easily rework this so that's in the round. I say rework because I'm willing to bet that's worked flat. We have more beach and play. In this magazine, we are spending a lot of time at the beach. This right here is a stripe pattern, but it does look like it has some slip stitch patterning going on, and it's very, very subtle though. It does have set-in sleeve. I'm willing to bet this is a folded over hem, folded over ribbing, folded over ribbing. I would probably put that as an intermediate beginner pattern. It does have some slip stitching, but not necessarily, I'm willing to bet that's slip stitching, but not necessarily a huge amount of it. So you'd only be doing maybe 1 to 2 rows as you move up. A gradient on this would be really pretty. This one here also includes the navy shorts. Now these two over here are interesting, mostly because these, at least the body on them, on this one, and the whole thing on this one, are worked from side to side rather than top to bottom. So this one here is supposed to be done in a periwinkle and white pullover, but it is worked, the body is worked side to side, and then the sleeves are worked, so they're actually worked flat but in the different direction. So you have this particular shirt, and then you have little shorts down here. This collar looks to be folded over, so not, this one here is probably more advanced beginner simply because you're working in a different direction. You have lots of folded over stuff. Doesn't look super duper hard to make, and I would probably go for something in a cotton, and then for the shorts put it either in a drawstring or an elastic band to keep them up. This one here is a much chunkier knit. Oh my god, look at how chunky that is. This is supposed to be white with a V insert and cuffs of red and blue. Does not include any shorts, so it's just the top, but this one here is worked again side to side. I don't know, I can't tell if the the sleeves are involved, but this looks like bat wings. So there's a lot of room underneath here. But as you can see, it comes in, you work your V, and then you have a split right here. And so you just work the two sides and then seam them up the middle. Over here, again, we are still at the beach. We're gonna spend a lot of time there. This is moss stitch with a wider, again, it's not a boat neck, it's not a turtleneck, it's not off the shoulder, it's just a wide folded over collar. Now these are going to be shorter, I'll tell you right now. Double check the length of your side seams because this looks cropped. Pants at this time were much higher up, so please double check that. And this does look like it has 3/4 sleeves, a little bit of shoulder shaping. Again, at this time, check your shoulder shaping. For women's garments, a lot of times you did have more shoulder shaping. This is a beginner pattern. There's not a lot going on. This is a good place where you can practice doing moss stitch. By the time you would be done with this piece, you would be an absolute expert at moss stitch and probably never want to do it again. There's nothing going on at the hem. I don't see anything over here at the cuffs. I don't see anything here at the edge of your piece, of your collar going on there. There's a little tiny bit of seaming, but I'm willing to bet those sleeves are even, it's even one piece. So that may just be a front and a back. And then you just seam the sides and underneath the arms. So this is I would call this a beginner pattern, but you could definitely play around with it. You could definitely add in lace if you wanted to. Alrighty, so the battery is all charged back up again. Over here we have, right here, it's a one-piece bathing suit. Again, there's going to be some shaping here at the sides and over the hip. Pretty basic, pretty simple, but the shaping here that you're gonna see at the sides, there's gonna be some shaping up here. I would call this an intermediate beginner pattern. It is worked in pieces, so you're going to have a front and a back, but the seams should not be hard to put together because you're just matching up your stripes. And up here at the top shouldn't be very much. Now I can't see what kind of bind off that is, but I'm willing to bet that's probably going to be like an I-cord, and then the folded under hem here as well. Next to that one, this is an interesting sort of setup, the yellow fish sweater. So it's got the folded hem, folded sleeve cuff, and I'm willing to bet folded collar. And then we have the fish. I just find this one interesting because just in terms of the realism of the fish and the style that the fish are done in is so different than everything else in this entire magazine. If you wanted to have something to go and wear out and about, this would not be a silly thing. Again, you can always change out the color pattern, the colors, so you could have the background be blue and then do sparkly fish with sequins if you wanted to. It's just right, as we go through, you'll see this one looks very different. Also, this does not include shorts. Okay, so we have a couple of options in here I would like to talk about. So this here is a pretty straightforward shawl collar cardigan. This one's going to come down a little bit lower. These buttons don't look that big. Those are huge buttons. It looks like it has a folded under hem. I'm willing to bet that this button band is doubled over. This should not be super hard to make. It's got some set-in sleeves. Again, it's a basic cardigan pattern with a wider collar, and then you're just extending this down. And what I found in the vintage patterns with items like this is that they're not going to expand very much for the hips. So if you have, say, a 30-inch waist, you might have a 32-inch hip. Double check before you get to that area to make sure that you're going to be able to button all the way down and so that it will fit comfortably and nicely on you. So down here we have some other cute ones. We have 13, this is a patterned bulky pullover. Now it's a Mary Maxim design. Mary Maxim loves to do, as a brand, tends to do bulkier knits. If you like 1950s Americana, you will probably love some of the other stuff by Mary Maxim. So, but the fact that this is very bulky, this will have a very low stitch count per inch or per centimeter. And this looks like it's literally just a slip stitch design. The thing I find interesting is how wide, look how wide that collar is. I don't know if that is picked up or if that's just part of the top and they kept going. It's interesting. Given how high up this section of the collar is, I am willing to bet there's buttons in the back. But this one over here with the 3/4 length sleeve, folded under, and it looks like a split hem. In fact, you know that this area is folded under because that little tiny bit of a hem here that looks white all the way. So I'm willing to bet that there's quite a bit of folded under facing there. But it's got a cute, almost Peter Pan-esque collar. This may also be doubled up. I'm willing to bet folded over hem for the cuff right here. But this is just like, looks like a basic houndstooth. This is very simple color work. I know that it looks complicated. This will not be complicated to do. Both of these I would probably put into advanced beginner just because of some of the color work. This one is going to probably work up a lot faster because it's so bulky. So I have a couple others over here. Number 15, a summer must. So this is actually 2 pieces. So you'd have the top here, which is a basic t-shirt. Looks like there might be a little bit of shaping along the sides. Little teeny tiny built-in sleeves. By the way, these are so easy to do if you like super short sleeves. It looks like a folded over hem, folded over hem, folded over collar. This is just one of those staples that you can have. Now, they do have the skirt here, which looks like it could be pleated or it's done in ribbing. So you will see a couple other knitted skirts and dresses as we get further along. But just keep in mind that knitted skirts without like a lot of color work, or if you're not doing cables and stuff like that, hopefully this is the directions are in the round, or I would turn it to being in the round. But this is just going to be what looks like ribbing. Just so much ribbing. So much ribbing. But those skirts are very comfortable when you're done. So up here, we've already seen cardigans like this one before. This one's just done in a stripe. You'll also notice there's no poof in the sleeve. None at all. Folded over collar, folded over button band, folded over hem. Down here, this one actually looks kind of neat because it's more like a coat. And this is an easy, bulky jacket. So this is going to have a low stitches per inch. It's just longer. The lapels here are nice. It'll end up mimicking a lot of your sewn clothing. They're a lot easier to put on than you would think. So basically, if you think of this like a V-neck, not decrease for the neck, and then that becomes part of your collar. You get that up to where it lines up with the shoulder seam, and then pick up for this top part of the lapel here. Put that on. And it looks like it has patch pockets, so they should be easy to move around and or remove if you wanted to. And again, folded over hems. There's a little white top here, and then there's a skirt. I can't tell how much of a facing this has, but this has almost like a Peter Pan collar, and it looks like there's a little edge here, but I can't tell if it's a fold in the fabric or if that's a facing that's there. But what I find interesting here is this skirt. And I believe the skirt is crocheted, so you're going to get into doing some of the mosaic stuff. But I think that skirts like these, again, make sure that they flare enough for your hips. Because when you have your waist here, you're going to have to flare very quickly for your hips. And then you can ease that flare down a little bit. But the circumference of your skirt will get much bigger than you think it's going to. Advanced beginner, intermediate, just because you're going to have to cast on some of this. There's a little bit of shaping. Beginner, the skirt, intermediate, beginner. Hopefully you start to notice that there's not a whole lot of like super complicated things. Again, this is for our new look of mohair. Like this dress here is just, it's got an empire waist to it, set in sleeves. You can see here that things are folded over collar. I'm willing to bet the bottom of this is folded over, but there's very little, if any, shaping. I would actually take and gather. I would make the skirt a little bit bigger and gather it into here. I think that looks kind of cute. And the same thing here, gathering. And the description is mohair is the news in an empire shaft of hot house pink with a narrow self belt tied high under the bosom. This is probably lighter weight. Today, people would probably use 2 different strands. So one helps give a coverage, and the mohair itself would end up giving it a nice halo. But again, you're looking at an intermediate beginner sort of pattern here. This is just break it down. Here is a very simple t-shirt like we saw before with a belt, and then you make it really long. That is this dress. And over here, even though it's not in color here, this is a basic wrap with a scalloped edge. It's basically a very, very wide scarf with a scalloped edge. Now, when I say it like that, I don't mean that this is not beautiful or it's not something that you should want to make or anything like that. Rather that these images are very beautiful, the photography is amazing, the model's great, actually showing you what's there, but that sometimes the pictures can make something look a lot more complicated, technically complicated than it is. All right, over here we have 2 more pieces. What gets me about these is how very, very, very modern these look. Anyway, so here we have a texture cardigan. Again, you're seeing the cabling right up along the edge, which it's just a nice little detail there. And the rest of this is just ribbed. It's just a basic cardigan with your button band being 2 what looks like cable braids. Like, that's it. This would be really pretty in a number of wardrobes, and because it doesn't have as much trendiness to it, you could wear that with a lot of other stuff. I kind of like that one. Okay, so down here we have another dress. I'm willing to bet there's going to be some shaping here along the sides. It's got a little bit of a flare on the skirt, not a whole lot. The thing that'll make it interesting is going to be this collar that's split in the back. I'm guessing there's not much going on in the front. I can't tell because there's no picture of it. And then you add on your belt. The easy way to think about these dresses is you literally are just taking a basic sweater pattern and then you just keep going on the bottom and flare it out. If you can turn any sweater into a dress doing that. And this is very pretty with a little bit of speckle to it. It looks very comfortable. Over here, we again have a much wider collar. This is very textured. This looks like one of the bouclier. It's a very textured yarn is what it looks like to me. The button band here, that's just ribbing. That's all that is. Just ribbing here. It's got some nice shape to it. Nothing super duper complicated, but the texture on it's interesting. All right, so now we're going to get into a couple dresses. And here are, these ones are amazing. So this is the Grecian look. Oh, I could not hit my camera. And this is literally ribbing with some sashes put on that crisscross and a little bit of a collar. It's not complicated, but it does make, you can kind of see here how you can take very simple stitch patterns though, and you can make them look incredibly elegant. This is not super difficult, other than it's going to take a long time because it's a dress and it's long. But you could easily shorten this and turn it into a shorter dress, or you can easily just turn it into a shirt. This is like an intermediate beginner. That's what I would call it, just because other than the length, there's nothing difficult going on here. A little bit of shaping, maybe a little tiny bit of seaming there, and that's it. This one here, the same thing. This is going to be done in stockinette. The ribbon here, it's an empire waist. It's going to be heavily gathered, so this actually probably has elastic in it, so you wouldn't gather all of this down. This most likely comes up, has a little tiny folded over hem, and it has a strip of elastic that's put in there. The same thing for the sleeves. And it creates those gathers for you, and there's probably one around the waist as well. This is what I would think of as an advanced beginner, and it's probably going to be like a raglan or a yoke that's pretty wide. This one's not going to be complicated, but it does look fairly versatile. Doing this in a very lightweight fiber, I think would look really, really nice. You could, again, shorten this as much as you wanted to. Your biggest holdup on this entire thing is actually just going to be the length, because that is a lot of stockinette. So we've got a couple more coming up. These are all going to be done in white yarn. This one here, it's a little sheath dress with an extra little yoke, and this literally looks like a pin tuck. Again, take a look at it. There's not really that much going on. This is an intermediate beginner. Over here on the next page is a lace dress. Looks really beautiful, nice, chic, but it's not super complicated. This is actually a pretty common pattern I found looking through vintage and historic patterns. This stitch, this kind of ferny sort of thing there, I find all over the place. I would put this at a more advanced beginner, mostly because it's going to have a high stitch count per inch, and it's the length. And literally all you're going to do is get to here and then just start expanding slightly. And not even that much. Look at how narrow that is. There's a couple others back here. I happen to like this one a lot. This is a very simple, I have shirt that has the same stitch pattern to it. This is a very simple lace dress, and it's got built-in sleeves. The biggest thing here, you're going to expand rapidly for your skirt here, but that's going to be about your hardest part. This is, again, advanced beginner because this stitch pattern is not going to be difficult. It does have a boat neck to it, so just be aware of that. If you don't like those, you will need to adjust the collar on that. Same thing for over here. This is just a very simple dress with a boat neck. So just be aware before you work on this. But if you do happen to have the shoulders, this would look, that can wear these well, that would look very nice. And this one says it's done in silk tweed metallic blend yarn. I think a really nice speckle would look good there. Knitted dresses are going to cling to the body a little bit more, so just be aware of that. Intermediate beginner. And pretty much the same thing over here. This one's done in a mock ribbing design with a pretty high stitch count per inch. But this is literally looks like 2 stitches of purl and then like 3 or 4 done in garter. So this is like a broken rib or a mock rib. There's going to be some shaping at the waist, a little bit up here. This is not quite a boat neck. It's just not willing to commit to being a boat neck. Oh, here we are in ribbon. If you look at the basic shape of this top, now it's a dress and does in fact have a pocket. But this slit in the front, I just think is kind of cute. It's a little bit different. It's not a V-neck, but it is a slit down the front, set in sleeves, not complicated. I would put this one at like an intermediate beginner. This one over here, however, with the bow. With the bow does kind of, date things a little bit. Now here, this is going to have a fairly low stitch count. So not that many stitches per inch. So this is a 2-piece. So you'll have a top and a bottom here that are going to be separate. And it looks like this has probably got a little bit of garter stitch right here along the edge of the top. And then this is just done with probably some form of slip stitch there. So again, you're looking at an intermediate beginner because this up here, even though it kind of looks braided, that's going to be garter. I'm willing to bet that that's garter stitch. And the skirts here are not super shaped. So that should be pretty easy to put together. And it's just looks like a simple slip stitch design. You're gonna see some more of the cardigans here. This one looks like a variation on a basket weave. You could also do this as some super teeny tiny honeycomb. And that may also look very interesting as well. Lower neck, set in sleeve. Nothing super complicated there. Things like this are going to be a good staple in a wardrobe if you only wanted to have a cardigan or 2. Over here, this black is actually lace. It may be a little bit difficult to see on camera. We've actually seen this lace pattern in an earlier lace dress, just a cardigan, but where your hem, button band, collar, and ribbing here on the cardigan there are just done in a contrasting yarn. I would probably put that at an advanced beginner just because of some of the lace, even though it's not super difficult, and because you're going to be picking up stitches and stuff like that, and you'll have 2 different things going on here. But not impossible, not super difficult. It's going to be a set-in sleeve, I'm willing to bet. That would be a good staple wardrobe piece. It's a basic cardigan with 3/4 sleeves. Now, I will tell you, looking at this is going to be shorter, so we would probably consider that in today closer to being cropped. But that is a pretty basic, classic piece, and this is supposed to be done in a soft shell pink. Same thing here. We have a twin set with a stockinette shell piece here. Then we have another little cardigan. The thing that makes it interesting is that you are embroidering or making up some flowers to put along the edging. And this is one of those other little details that you can definitely do if you wanted to get into doing embroidery as a way to take a basic piece and then change it up. The cool thing here is that if you remove those flowers, and just change them every 6 months, it's basically like you getting a whole nother shirt every 6 months. Again, this is going to be pretty simple. This one over here, which is for the cocktail hour, and it's supposed to be done in a metallic yarn. The thing that makes it interesting is it has a very low cut back. I'm willing to bet that it's a much higher cut up in the front. It looks like it has built-in sleeves. Looks like it's got maybe a little bit of garter right here along the edge and with a little bit of shaping here in the body. But there's no reason why you couldn't have that low cut back if you wanted to. Be aware, if you do this, you may have to add another strap along the back here to keep your shoulders from falling off. Intermediate beginner. If you use metallic yarn, I would actually bump that up a little bit simply because metallic yarn has like 0 chill. It is not going to have a lot of stretch to it, but pretty basic. Right between intermediate and advanced just because you have some more shaping in the back. Back here with this super wide, a simple sweater that takes on a festive air when you add your favorite flower to the sleeves. I do think that this which has a folded over collar, is neat because it is so wide. This is almost something off the shoulder. But what you're seeing with these flowers is that you can add different things to the sleeves, different embroidery or anything like that. Change it out. Once a year, twice a year, you get a whole new top. But I think that this would be probably very comfortable. And the same thing over here. This is just a simple stole. What may make this interesting is that you have a thin yarn on large needles, so it gives the appearance of lace without actually having to put in any of the work. This doesn't appear to have any shaping to it. Like, it's just a really, really, really wide scarf. Like I said, what will make this interesting is how you play with the texture of the yarn. So now we have machine knitting, and interestingly enough, we finally get to some stuff for men. Yes, men in fact do exist in Vogue. We saw this one in a different magazine that I have, but it's pretty basic and simple. What is this? It's a very, very low V with pockets, and these appear to be very shallow pockets, but they are knitted in, they are not knitted on after the fact. And set in sleeves. Nothing super difficult or complicated here. Something like this, though, could make a nice base to it. This one here for a men's sweater is a boat necked. You can kind of see here what happens when I try to wear these, is it basically chokes me. So I am not a fan of this. I do not have enough slope in my shoulder to not try to strangle myself. Now what makes this interesting are going to be the pieces here on the sides. This is basically like a big square here. And underneath the arm, it looks like you are going to pick up stitches and work your way across, and this is done in what appears to be garter with probably some doubled up yarn. It's a neat little detail. And this one here, as well as the cardigan before, this one here is like a beginner sweater because there's not really that much to do. You have a tiny bit of shaping up here. You have a little tiny bit of picking up here. This is just a big square folded over edge. And then we have 2 pairs of socks down here with just, it's a ribbing design to it. Again, this is about taking something very simple and how you can make it look a lot more complicated, just like over here. Simply adding this little panel in underneath the arm creates it creates a point of interest. This is something easy enough to do, and I would say get some scrap yarn and kind of play around. Let yourself be open to the idea of knitting in different directions. And you can easily add in little panels like this that will create those points of interest and will help you to make items that are very much tailored to you. Although I wish that this particular photo, I don't know why they have him in shadow. That's a very odd thing. All right, so we're down to the kids' outfits. Here you can see this literally looks like garter stitch. Just a simple garter stitch cardigan for a child. That's seed stitched. But you can see how that could be super duper versatile and just one of those standard things that you have in a child's wardrobe. Down here we're going to have a little sailor's outfit. So a basic t-shirt, you just have a wider collar with a little flap on the back. Over here, this is said rough ribbed high turtleneck sweater with deep cut raglan sleeves. So this is just a very chunky kids sweater here, and it's just done with ribbing. This could be very easy to do. I would check with the kids to see how much they like this, but this particular kind of garment, not hard to do. You know, you're looking again, intermediate beginner, just because it's a sweater and you're gonna have a little bit of shaping. Same thing down here, intermediate beginner, intermediate beginner. This one here may be getting more into the advanced section because it looks like this is a twin set. So you're gonna have a little tiny, you're gonna have a shirt underneath. Probably has little sleeves to it. Looks like a little t-shirt. It's super cute. Looks like it has a little, probably a Peter Pan type collar. And then it's going to have this little cardigan over the top. With nice cute little heart detail to it. But honestly, the reason I would say that this is an advanced beginner is because you're going to have this color work here and that's going to be done in intarsia. However, there's not that much of it. Like, and these are some of the little details that you can add in if you want to take a basic thing and just add these in. And you could easily change that out to a different pattern if you want to. So you could put little 4-leaf clovers on there or something like that. And up here, this is just a simple cable knit cardigan where you just have some striping, color striping done along the button band. Stuff like this, I would probably put that at advanced beginner, only because you will have a lot of the texturing, so a lot of the cabling on the body, and then you're going to have a little tiny bit of color work here. But this should not be super difficult to make. And then we have baby stuff, and we're almost done. So you're going to have diaper covers for a toddler. I would put that at probably intermediate beginner. You may have a little bit of fuss picking up around the legs here, but if that ever happens, a really easy thing to do is just to knit this ribbing separately and sew it on when you're done. You have cute little baby blanket here. And this just looks like a very, very simple eyelet stitch with a folded over hem. Diaper cover, little tiny sweater. This one here has more shaping than what you have up here. So I would actually put that one at an advanced beginner just because you have, it looks like a little gusset that you have to sew in, plus the legs. But the top there is going to be probably an intermediate beginner. Baby clothes I tend to put at a lower difficulty simply because you don't have as many stitches to work with. I find even the most complicated lace pattern, if you're only dealing with 25 stitches or 30 stitches, is easier to work with than a simpler lace pattern when you have 200 stitches, if that makes sense. So that's where I would put that. Super cute for a kid. The same thing over here. You have a little headpiece, the matching cardigan with this giant collar, and then a little blanket that does have some stripes to it. I find it interesting because if you hop back about 10 to 15 years before, this baby would have been decked out in so much lace it'd be ridiculous. Anyway, so that's kind of where we're at with our here's everything for babies. Then we have all of our directions back here. Oh, there's our cover piece. As you can tell, this particular thing has seen better days. We have things for knitting machines, how to do some basic mending, baby stuff, how to put together seams. This is what I was talking about when you look at some of the advertising, because they're pretty neat. This is just a basic men's shawl collar. We have seen other basic and super not as technically difficult coats like this before for men, where it's just got a shawl collar. This appears to look like a basket weave, but a very tiny one, so like a 2x2 basket weave with built-in pockets. I don't see any ribbing down here at the bottom, but there is some on the cuff. This would not be very hard to make or modify, and I can't see where the shoulder seam or anything is, so this could be done. You could take a good raglan sweater and modify for this. You could have a set-in sleeve. You could pick up as you go if you'd like to. I don't think it's a drop shoulder, but there's no reason why you couldn't have that as well. This one here, we've already, that's a basic raglan with stripes, but you can see simple Peter Pan-esque collar. Also at this time period, you can tell how sloped the shoulders are. I could not wear that top. It would look terrible on me. Now, the thing I like here, this is just, looks like a fan stitch. Got a nice little brooch there. But this is just a square collar. So this is actually super duper easy to make, because I'm willing to bet these sleeves are probably knitted, just cast on once you got up so far. And they're built in. This is probably a very, very easy thing to make. That's probably a beginner pattern. The stole is separate. Or, shoot, if you wanted to, you could stitch that one on and give yourself, a fancy cape type thing if you wanted. Although the tassels, look at that fringe. So much fringe. But the point is, when you take a look at any of these magazines, if you know how to do any basic design work, look at the ads as well. Alrighty. Same thing back here, just texture. Okay, well, I think I have talked for long enough. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you guys later. Have fun, make stuff. Bye.